And I'm going to bring that back to you at the end of my presentation. But what I'm going to start off by saying is that what you can do most is not be quiet. You need to understand your voices really are heard and are listened to. And if you didn't have that lesson made for you before, you certainly did get it with the opt-out parents who made sure their voices were heard. We wouldn't be where we are today with some of the moratoriums were it not for a group of really angry parents who decided the only way to make change is to make noise, and constructive noise is part of the American system. So I remember meeting with them the first time. I was with my first week as Regent, and I said, I think it's a great opportunity for a lesson in civil disobedience. And I took them through history, starting with the Boston Tea Party. So they understood this is who we are in America. And I'm going to say to all of you, it may be time often to make noise. It's part of who we are. Please don't shy away from that. So you will notice that I have up on the screen a quote by Nelson Mandela, who I think in that one quote defines every country on the planet. Every country on the planet. So those countries where they're murdering their children can tell you how little they value children. And here you can know and understand how much we value our resources. So let me start with an apology to you, and I do this in the many school districts that I visit with. It's no secret that the rapid implementation of the New York education reforms caused a great deal of disruption and resentment among educators and the public. Simply put, the system could not absorb the changes that were thrust all at once upon them. Additionally, key stakeholders were rightly angered that they were often left out of the decision-making process. This new Board of Regents, and there are 17 members on the board, with the most recent appointments this past April, 9 of the 17 are new. And for the first time, there's been no history of bringing educators to the board, 5 were sitting superintendents for an extensive period of time. So we bring both our policy experiences and our practical experiences, because the policy is only as good as its implementation, and you need people at the table that understand both. So this board, with its new chancellor, who is an incredible person, and one of the 5 former superintendents, she's from New York City, we're committed to changing this absence of public involvement. We understand that it's important to let you all know what the critical issues are, and we acknowledge that there's an urgent need to restore a sense of balance and transparency in the way in which we develop and implement policy. I say there's an urgent need to reassure you that we are competent people, because I do know there's still a lot of anger out there around the statements and activities of the Board of Regents. So 9 new people, and I think, I don't want to get this number wrong, for the first time in the history of the Board of Regents, by one person, the majority are women. From no women to 2 to a majority of women. Now the men are saying, so what's that? I think to us, I would say, we approach this in very warm and caring ways, not to say that we don't. But I think it's pretty exciting to know that finally, at least in one place, women have one more voice that they can exercise in the field of education. So now I'm going to try this and see if it works. It does. Okay. New accountability. We've largely forgotten some of the most historically powerful enablers of teaching and student learning, and that's the issue of equity, as my colleague said a few minutes ago. Since 1980, we have demanded more results from teachers and schools, while as a nation and a state, failing to accept any responsibility for the well-being of the children we send to schools. David Berliner said in a quote a decade ago, we need to face up to the fact that our whole society, not just teachers, and I'm going to come back to that, because I think what we've done to shame teachers is just an embarrassment for this state. We need to face the fact that our whole society needs to be held as accountable for providing healthy children ready to learn, as schools are for delivering quality education. One-way accountability, where we're always blaming the schools for the faults that we find, is neither just not likely to solve the problems we want to address. If we want schools and teachers to be fully capable and equitable partners in raising children up, we need to accept the fact that we cannot kick the ladder out from under the same children and then blame the teachers when they do not catch all parts of the ladder. So we all know that NCLB was a theory of action. I'm not even going to go into this. You all know the history of NCLB. And the president at that time really, I will say this, really felt that the themes of No Child Left Behind were the right themes. And it was a very bipartisan act. And I don't disagree with him that the theme was to ensure that, as he would call it, the soft images of bigotry were finally diminished. It is in the implementation that this law became so credibly flawed. What were the outcomes? Well, they arrived at the new policies associated with punishment and shame instead of new opportunities for professional growth. The influence of tests on the curriculum still remains negative. This was supposed to be about the levels of critical thinking essential to the ingredients of a 21st century school. Now, graduation rates did rise, but the economic gaps or the opportunity gaps remained stagnant, or they actually widened. And the level of community resistance, an unanticipated outcome, became the latest citizens to engage in civil disobedience, headlined in the media as opt-out. This was to be about higher order thinking skills, which actually we did measure, and it dropped. And I know that you're doing some work with the theories that Tony Wagner puts forth, and I will come back to that a bit, because the intent in his work and in the intent of the original law was to help students move from and shift from memorizing and recalling to the challenges of innovation. Throughout our history, the goal of school has been to prepare children to be effective citizens and caring human beings. So the law didn't really take us in that direction. While we continue to ask ourselves what academic skills and knowledge we want our students to acquire, we also have to ask the following. What kind of young people do we want our children to become? What kind of lives do we want them to lead? What kind of society do we want them to create? And that got lost in the curriculum discussions. Why haven't the outcomes improved more? I'm not going to read that slide. You can see for yourself what happened here. I will point out one, there was, and this is a major issue in America at this point, I'll take you to the last one. We saw a continuing growth in the inequality of school resources. A continuing growth of poverty and homelessness, by the way, is at its largest number ever in the United States. There are more homeless children today than we've ever had before in our schools. And there were state and district policies that people had difficulty interpreting. So many things affect achievement. I want to spend a minute on this, because achievement gaps really have to do with socioeconomic status and zip code. No one in this nation chooses to be poor. Believe me. No one wants to be poor. Being poor eats at your self-esteem. And in America, 6 out of 10 children born into poverty will enter adulthood still poor. It does affect each one of us in this room. Children enter school each day and they look for the teachers who have not given up on them and who often send some tangible reasons to hope. That's really important. But we do have to have the moral will to bring that hope back into their lives. So, as you can see, student backgrounds and factors are probably the biggest component of the pie, and it's the one that we have to address. And I am not saying that schools should wash their hands and say we can't do anything. What we need to do is understand what schools need in order to address these issues, and I will get to resources later, because we don't fund our schools adequately, all of our schools in this state, and the governor knows that's how we feel, and he knows that's how I feel.